back to our final installment of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. We're so glad that you're here today, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So, what we are making today is bread. Our food of the week is wheat, and bread is the obvious choice of what to make. Last week, we made something with grape leaves because grapes were one of the elements in communion. And of course, bread is the other. Across the three major Abrahamic faiths, wheat and bread is considered a gift from God. So bread plays a really special role in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So celebrating Easter with bread is absolutely appropriate. Today, since we've been continuing our theme of food from the Middle East, we're going to be making pita bread. If you have never had pita bread before, there's a variety of variations of it. Sometimes it's thick, sometimes it's thin, sometimes it has a pocket to stuff salads and sandwiches, and sometimes it doesn't. But it's very common throughout the Middle East and the Mediterranean areas. Our recipe this week comes from a blogger named Jeff, who is not from the Middle East himself, but is doing something similar to us. He runs a blog called CatholicFoodie.com, and I believe also has a podcast, and his slogan is "Where Food and Faith Meet." So I thought that was a really cool place to go for you if you've really enjoyed the Guess Who's Coming to Dinner series and you're interested in continuing along this line and finding other recipes that connect food and faith. So we're making pita bread today, and this is a great recipe to make with helpers because it only has a few ingredients and you never have to count higher than 3 to count out what you need and how much of your ingredients. So we're going to combine together. The instructions today call for using a stand mixer with a dough hook. I don't have one, so I'm doing it the old-fashioned way with a fork and some cleanly washed hands. Excellent. So we're going to start with 3 cups of all-purpose flour. You could also use bread flour, but I just have all-purpose flour. So Rosie, you can help me dump that? Yeah. You'll want to keep your flour handy because with bread, the instructions are just a starting point. You might need a little bit more water or a little bit more flour, and then plus you'll need some flour for dusting. So it all depends on the day. I know a lot of people who say that bread is best made on an overcast and cloudy or rainy day, and we've got a sunny day here, so here's hoping it still turns out well. Okay, our next ingredient is 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Can you pour that in, Rosa? Oh, gentle. Excellent. So I'm not using my garlic infused olive oil this week. I want my bread to be a little bit more neutral than that. But if you knew you were only going to be using your bread in a savory context, that would be great as well. Okay. Some yeast. This is 2 teaspoons of instant yeast. In it goes, Rosa. So because it's instant yeast, there's no need to proof it ahead of time. 2 teaspoons of kosher or sea salt. Pour that in. And half a teaspoon of sugar. There we go. So you still want the sugar to help activate the yeast. A lot of times people think of pita as unleavened bread because by the time you eat it, it is still quite flat. But it does require yeast, and it does rise first, and then you form it into your flattened shape. So we're going to mix that all through together with a fork, and then we're slowly going to add our water. The call is for 1 cup of water and then a little more if needed. I think when you're making bread, you should always use warm water. Again, it helps activate the yeast. You don't want boiling hot water, but you'll get a better rise if you use warm water. Okay. A little bit. A little bit. Look at that. So we're going to stir with our fork for a little bit, but then it's going to be time to roll up our sleeves and knead it with our hands.
It's a beautiful ember.
It is a beautiful ember. All right. Do you want to put your hands in? This is great sensory play for kids. Is the dough sticky? Not yet. It's still absorbing all the flour. You want to make sure if you're going to be kneading by hand, I'm still in the bowl, but eventually I'm going to turn it onto the hard surface to knead. And so obviously you want to make sure your surface is nice and clean. I cleaned and disinfected mine before we started. Okay, I can see that I'm going to need a little bit more water here because I've got a lot of flour still on the bottom of my bowl that's not coming together in my dough. Now this is where you have to be really careful because if you over add the water, then you need to add more flour and on we go. So just a wee little bit at a time. A little can go a long way. Okay, we're going to take this part out because this part made a good ball. And we're going to add a little bit more water here. I'm going to stir it with our fork.
Tap, tap, tap.
If you've never made bread before, this can be a really challenging part to try to get the feel of what a good bread dough is supposed to feel like. Because, like I said, the recipe is usually only a guideline. It's a good place to start, and you're usually a little bit on either side of it. But you want to get the right consistency more than the right measurement. So, Rosa, I find it works better if I use the heel of my hand right here and push rather than my fingers. My fingers aren't as strong as that part of my hand. There you go. That's good. Bread dough, in my experience, is different from pastry crust. When I make pie crust or muffin batter or pancakes like we did in the first video, you want to mix it until it's just combined. And not over mixing is the key to things being fluffy and rising well and having nice, soft, flaky pastry. But with bread, it's the opposite. You want to knead it and really work that dough because that's where the magic happens. So you can knead it and really put your love into it. Yep, we're almost there. I've never made pita myself before that'll have a pocket, and I don't know if this recipe will have a pocket. We'll have to wait and see. But I have made naan bread, and I've made a fair amount of what we call in our family air buns. So really light, fluffy bread that gets used either as a dinner roll or as a hamburger bun that are a classic family recipe that my grandmother made a lot of and was kind of one of the things she is best remembered for. So I've kneaded a little bit of bread in my life, but we'll see if that translates into good pita. We have our big sticky ball, and we're going to put it back in the bowl and cover it. So I cover just with a heavy tea towel. You can use plastic wrap, but I avoid plastic wrap wherever I can. And you're going to leave it until it doubles in size, probably 1 to 2 hours. You want to leave it in a warm spot, so maybe somewhere in the sunshine, up on top of your fridge. Sometimes if I'm in a rush, I turn my oven on to the lowest temperature, let it heat. So for me, that's 170 degrees. Let it heat, and then as soon as it gets to 170, I turn it off again, and then I put it in there to rise, so it's like in a slightly warm environment. If I need it to rise a little faster. But of course you don't want it to cook and you don't want your tea towel to catch fire. So you want to make sure your oven is off before you're going to do your dough rise in the oven. So we're going to leave our dough to rise and we'll meet you back here when we have a nice big ball of dough. So I'm going to show you what it looks like, the size it is now, so that way we can have a size comparison when we come back.
Hi. Thank you for dinner.
Thank you for coming to dinner. That's right. We're back And here is our dough. So it has done a nice job rising. I would say we let it rise for more than 2 hours because toddler life. Are you ready? Oh, punch it. Here we go. Here, take your hand and hit it really hard. Woohoo! And it flops back down. There you go. So that wasn't quite as fluffy as I expected, but like I said, the bread I usually make is called air buns. So I think this should do nicely. Now, we're getting ready to form the dough and put it in balls. It's gonna cook in the oven at 400 degrees. It's recommended that you have a hot something already in the oven, so either a baking steel, a pizza stone, which is what I'm going to use, or if you don't have either of those things, then your heaviest cookie sheet. So when you bake with a pizza stone, you want it to be in the oven while your oven is heating, so it heats up with it, so it's not a jarring change of temperature. So I'm going to set my oven to 400 and put my pizza stone in, which will open up our workspace. Make sure you give yourself enough time for your oven to heat. I find it definitely takes my oven longer to heat up when there is a pizza stone in it. We're kneading our dough on a lightly floured surface. We also want a lightly floured surface like a baking pan to set the dough that we formed onto. So we're gonna just like give that a little dusting. And this recipe is gonna make 6 pitas. So we want to break our dough into approximately 6 even balls. So
I changed myself and I'm a stuffy.
You're a stuffy? What kind of stuffy are you?
I'm pink and I'm soft.
That sounds lovely.
And I have my dough and it's smashing.
That's great. We have now 6 balls plus Rosa's special one. And they're approximately even, maybe not perfect. But we're going to take them and we're going to roll them out on our surface until they make a circle that is a 1/4 inch thick. Then we will transfer them to our lightly floured surface and put our tea towel back over top and let them rise for an additional 20 minutes. You can see Rosa's taste testing the dough. So we're gonna roll this out. I'm gonna roll it out as thin as I can, even though it says a 1/4 inch. I guess that's pretty thin anyway. But I find that the dough is elastic and it stretches back, so it never stays quite as thin as I roll it. It's not important to me that these pitas be perfectly round, although if that's the aesthetic is part of what's important to you, then maybe you need to be a little bit more careful. I don't know, maybe they toss like pizza dough. Should we try tossing it like pizza dough? No, Mom's not going to be a professional pizza tosser anytime soon. Not with pitas. So now that I have it as thin as I think I can make it, I'm going to transfer it to my floured surface. And we're going to do the next one. How does it taste?
Good.
Alright, we'll keep working away at this while our oven is getting up to temperature. And we'll show you what they look like just before they go in. We're on our last pita, and Rosa is really getting the hang of rolling out our dough. It took me a second pan because each pita gets big enough that I could only fit 4 on a cookie sheet. As I mentioned before, the cookie sheet is dusted with flour, and then once you place it on the cookie sheet, you dust it with flour again. We're gonna stretch it a little bit, Rosa, like pizza. I'm getting better at this too.
I have it.
We dust it on the top as well. I can't get it thin enough without stretching. I find this works much more effectively than the rolling pin. Maybe you're better with a rolling pin than I am. By the time we get to the 6th one, we're almost at 20 minutes anyway. So, oh, don't touch, please. That one's already done. So we're going to put the pita in the oven directly onto the pizza stone. Let's roll it one more time. Let's roll it together. Directly onto the pizza stone. And so how many you bake at a time is dependent on how big you made them and how many fit on your pizza stone. They don't need to be in there for long. It's gonna be 4 minutes on either side. We're gonna put it on the cookie sheet and then we're gonna dust it with flour. So we're gonna go a little bit of flour, just like that. So we have our first 4 here. I think I can probably fit 3 on a cookie sheet at a time, which makes 2 batches, which works out really well. I wanna make sure there's enough room to maneuver them on my cookie sheet. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick them up with slightly moistened hands. We're gonna pick them up with slightly moistened hands, dust off the extra flour, and slightly moisten them with our hands as we do so. Then they'll go straight into the oven, right onto the pizza stone. 4 minutes on each side. Flip them with a large spatula, and then 4 minutes on the other side, and they should be a nice golden brown and all puffed up when you take them out. If you think you'll eat them right away, it might be nice to brush with butter. Otherwise, you can just let them cool and dip them in your favorite dip, like hummus or tzatziki or baba ganoush. I think I will link below to my favorite homemade hummus recipe, and you can try that out if you'd like. All right, our first batch of pita has just come out of the oven. This one puffed a little bit, but the others didn't. So that tells me I either didn't wait long enough for them to rise, or I didn't make them thin enough. My experience with making naan bread tells me that the thinner I make it, the more puff I get, because the heat gets all the way through the bread right on contact. So even though it says 1/4 inch, I would say go as thin as you possibly can if you really want to get the puff. So I'm gonna wait another few minutes before I put my second batch in to make sure it really gets that 20 minutes for the second rise, and hopefully it'll be really tasty. We've got our second batch out of the oven now. I left it in a minute longer, so it's a little bit more golden, but definitely not a big puffy pocket. It is risen and puffed up somewhat, but it's not the full pocket shape that then deflates to make a traditional pocket pita. But with practice, we'll probably get better at that, and it'll still be tasty in the meantime. You can see behind me, Rosa and I are already starting to make some hummus, so we're gonna have a tasty afternoon. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us both today in our pita making and throughout this whole series of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. It's been a delight to travel through Lent with you. We wish you a very happy Easter. And if you're watching this video right as it comes out and you're a Trinity member, we look forward to joining together with you on Saturday evening for our Easter Vigil potluck. I hope you'll make a Middle Eastern dish to share with us virtually, and we can all see the different things that each other has made. Excellent. Happy Easter. Bye.